How can I incorporate top of search placement calculations into my routine bid optimizations? Is that what you do? Or as a separate task, would you build it into the regular routine of optimization? So the first question is, how can you incorporate top of search placement calculations into your routine bid optimizations? What I want to say is you definitely want to make sure that you're taking placement percentages or dynamic up and down bidding for that matter into your bid optimizations. Why is that? It depends on how you calculate your bids. Now, if you don't factor in cost per click into your bidding strategy, like if you're not adjusting based off of cost per click or analyzing based off of cost per click, then you're probably fine. However, for us, our bid optimizations do factor in the cost per click. By the way, if anyone wants to know any more nitty-gritties on bid optimization, I wrote our algorithm myself. Now, it's definitely been optimized and updated over the last 5 or 6 years at this point, but I've gone way deep in the weeds in this. The factor that you need to keep in mind, again, I mentioned dynamic up and down bidding, placement percentages, anything that sort of will vary your cost per click and has the potential for your cost per click to be greater than your bid. That's where you run into issues, because if technically speaking, your bid optimization sequence is saying like, hey, we need to lower this bid, but then it's going off of the cost per click, there is a scenario in which you could accidentally increase bids that you intend to decrease. So in this case, you need to be very, very careful. It depends. If you might be using bulk files, the best way that we found to sort of like adjust for this is you want to run some sort of macro, or you can create a formula or something that will basically take a look at what is the dynamic up and down bidding and what is the placement percentage of this campaign, and then make sure that you're sort of like applying those adjustments to the bid. I'll actually tell you how we've done it. Is what we'll do is we'll calculate what we call like the adjusted bid, meaning we look at the dynamic up and down bidding, so that would be double the bid, and then we would look at the placement percentages. And by the way, you should never use dynamic up and down bidding and placement percentages in the same campaign, but heaven forbid if that happens, you want to make sure that whatever like your adjusted bid is, you like double stack it. So then my question would be like, is my double stack bid or whatever my highest bid, if you're familiar with spreadsheet formulas, you would use the max. So you essentially calculate all of these and then you say, what is the max possible like bid that could ever be entered into the ad auction, which honestly, that's not a bad thing to calculate, just to take a look. Like if you have that formula, again, it's not like hard. It is a little bit more complicated because you have a ton of nested formulas in your spreadsheet. Anyone familiar with spreadsheet work, it's like nested formulas can get bonkers sometimes. So it's one of those, or you could just calculate it using additional columns, but that might not be a bad thing to say like, hey, do I have like a max adjusted bid that's like insane? Because there are some times where maybe you have like a $3 bid and then like a 200% top of search, like that could get really crazy really fast. So essentially we're calculating that into it and saying like, hey, where are our high bids? And then when we're calculating like our new bid, we want to be conscious of, were we calculating off of the cost per click, or are we calculating off of the bid? Now, like I said, if you don't have a crazy like increase, if you don't have a crazy up dynamic, then calculating off of the cost per click is not a problem. But if you have like this sort of dynamic increase involved, then you want to make sure you're calculating off of the bid. So that's essentially what we're doing, is we're just saying like, hey, where are we going to be making the wrong optimization decision, and make sure that you account for that in your optimization. Now, your other question was like, do you put this as part of your bid optimization? Do you put that as part of your routine? I'll tell you when it makes sense to put this as part of like your bid optimization sequence. And then let's talk about where, in my personal opinion, it doesn't make sense. So the one place that it may make sense to add this into, like adjusting maybe more placements, less bid, and focusing more on that, would be if you have like a single keyword campaign, specifically if it's an exact match. Because here you can be very, very confident that any placement adjustment that I'm using is going to be applied to this one specific keyword. It's very black and white. So that is honestly the only time I would recommend really leaning on placements to help with the optimization. Now, where I don't recommend it be part of like your typical bid routine, there are some people out there, good friends of mine, by the way, so like no shade to them there, but they're always going to have differences of opinion. And what I found is that if you rely a lot on the placement adjustments and do a little bit less on the bid optimizations, when you have a campaign that has multiple keywords in it, especially when those keywords are broader match types, broad match, phrase match, expanded and targeting, those kind of auto campaigns, the amount of control, like the control over where those increases in placements are going to happen, you don't really have any control of if they really will be applied to the keyword and what you want them to be applied to. My personal opinion, there's way too many variables in that mix, and we have found that just for us, performance works best when we mainly adjust bits. And so for that case, like I would say, like if you have your like strategic ranking campaigns, maybe you sort of, those honestly should be treated sort of as a separate optimization. Honestly, a lot of times the manual optimization, depending on how many of those campaigns you have, can often work best, right? But if we do everything manual, we're going to have a lot of things slip through the cracks. It's going to be way too tedious, hard to scale. And so in those cases, like some sort of routine but optimization makes sense. And then how often? So yes, we treated placement optimization sort of as a separate task. And we do build it into the regular routine. We're checking them minimum once a week, probably more than that because we adjust bids more often than once a week.